The story begins at a colossal mansion where young girls are being auctioned off to wealthy old men at exorbitant prices. Every single one of those heartless individuals deserves nothing but death. But unfortunately, in this cold and cruel world, money is everything. A girl with dark hair began to lament her fate. She couldn't understand why God had thrown her into such a cruel world. But a beautiful silver-haired girl named Dia reassured her, telling her that she needed to look beautiful and not cry. After that, Dia was called onto the stage to perform, and she walked cheerfully, humming a tune. She was introduced as the special product of the evening, with a starting price of $10 million. Almost everyone at the auction began to bid for Dia because everyone wanted a silver-haired girl in their home. But Dia just smiled and used her magic to create a key for the handcuffs. Immediately after, she created a rifle with magic and started firing at everyone in the hall. Chaos ensued as everyone started to flee while guards tried to contain the girl. Returning to the changing room, the girls were in a panic due to the sudden commotion. But before the guards could take action, one of the girls, named Tart, smashed a bottle on the head of one of them, knocking him unconscious. She turned around and found two more guards standing at the door, who immediately drew their knives. Tart decided to get serious and pulled out a spear from somewhere and began to beat the two thugs. She easily dodged their attacks and defeated them, obtaining a set of keys. She threw the keys to the other girls and told them to run while she quickly advanced to the main hall. Dia continuously shot anyone she could, then suddenly discovered the old woman who organized the auction and captured all the girls after destroying their homeland. She quickly tried to shoot the old woman, but a sword blocked her path, and she narrowly avoided it with a rifle blast, but was still knocked to the ground. She realized this guard also had magical powers. But before he could attack again, Tart appeared and held him off with her spear. But as more guards arrived, she quickly pushed him away and grabbed her rifle before firing a blast at all the scum. Both Dia and Tart quickly gathered on the stage, ready with their weapons. But the number of guards was too great for the two of them to handle. Dia decided that she needed to use a large-scale magic attack if they wanted to survive this. So she told Tart to keep the enemy at bay. While Dia began to chant, Tart pretended to be in an American high school and started shooting down enemies. Dia focused on her chant and soon shattered the mansion's walls, creating an escape route. Just outside, near the forest, I, Lug, a master assassin, was aiming my rifle. Witnessing the entire scene of destruction, I realized my judgment was correct. The mistress of the mansion was the culprit, who attacked the villages, destroyed them, and took away any beautiful girls she could find. I decided I had enough evidence and was ready to execute the target. And so, I used my magic eyes, which allowed me to see through walls. Thanks to that, I was able to track the mistress of the mansion, who was running from room to room to avoid her fate, unaware that her future had already been decided. Then, I pulled the trigger. A shot without aiming, straight at her head. This took me back to a previous life, when I was a master assassin on Earth, working with my brethren, where we were tasked with eliminating a drug cartel. My accuracy was unparalleled, as I could take down enemies one by one. Even though they tried to hide behind old cars, it was useless. After assassinating 6 people, I gathered my belongings and started to retreat. The trainee told me we could finish off the remaining mafia members. But I replied that I was only ordered to kill 6 people, so my job was done. The girl tried to argue, but I told her to shut up and explained that the organization only wanted to replace the high-ranking members of the mafia at this time, and we were not allowed to do anything without orders. Hearing this, the girl fell silent and got into the car. But suddenly, I noticed a drone hovering in the sky. My heart pounded, I jumped into the car and drove off, telling the girl to prepare her weapon as we were about to be pursued. As I predicted, a large convoy of soldiers in Humvees chased after us and opened fire on the fleeing car, destroying it instantly in a sea of flames. But they didn't know I had escaped by jumping out of the moving car at the last second, faking my death. I bandaged the girl's leg wound and told her to rest. We would start moving at dawn. While trying to rest, the girl began to ask me why I became an assassin. I replied that I was born into the organization, and they raised me to be the greatest assassin in the world. We eventually disagreed about vegetarianism or something, so I decided to show her the place of a woman is in the kitchen as I shot her in the head. The girl was shocked because, although she was the top assassin in her class, she was still shot by an old man like me. And not only that, I also took her firearm before shooting her. I told her I took her firearm because she trusted me, which was a big mistake because I might be ordered to kill her later to leave no evidence. After fully recovering, I finally put the gun down and placed it back in her hand before going to sleep. The girl stood there sharpening a knife before pulling it out of its sheath and pointing it at me. I just told her to go to sleep, but the seductive girl would really shoot me. Honestly, she would. I simply woke up and showed her that I had taken the knife out of her sheath once again, causing her to stand there, motionless, imagining a future where she only makes sandwiches. The next morning, we finally arrived home safely, where I called my organization. They congratulated me on completing my final mission and wished me a pleasant retirement, ordering me to return to Japan immediately. I took out 2 fake passports and some plane tickets. We successfully boarded the plane. Sitting in my seat, I thought about what I would do with my life now, when suddenly the plane shook violently and there was an announcement that the plane had been hijacked. I felt a little strange, so I rushed to the cockpit, knocked down the flight attendant, and opened the door to find both pilots dead and the control panel damaged. I realized that the organization was definitely eliminating me completely to avoid future trouble. I smiled wryly at my fate and tried to control the plane, but the organization gave me no chance, and a fighter jet followed, blowing us to pieces out of the sky. As I took my last breath on Earth, I felt betrayed when I suddenly woke up in another world in front of a beautiful, white-haired woman who was laughing at me for trusting the organization after lecturing my juniors about not trusting anyone. I didn't understand why she was making fun of me, so I asked her what she wanted. The goddess told me that she was responsible for the departed, and that I had 2 choices right now. One is to be reborn on Earth as a new person with no memories, or I could choose to be reborn in a fantasy world with all my memories intact if I promised to do a job for her. I decided that I was tired of Earth and the vegetarians there, so I chose the fantasy world and asked what I had to do. The woman smiled and said I had to assassinate the hero who would be born in this world. I was shocked to hear that, so the goddess told me to calm down and offered me a cup of tea. She asked why I wanted to choose the fantasy world, and I replied that on Earth, I was born with only one purpose: to be an assassin. I was taught to disregard thoughts and feelings and focus only on killing. But in the end, when I was about to die, I regretted and was disappointed that I had not lived the life I truly wanted. I asked myself which hero I was tasked with killing. So the goddess decided to transmit all the information about this new world directly into my brain in just an instant. Now I know everything about this new imaginary world where everyone seems to have various magical and physical skills, which would be considered superpowers on Earth. Among them, the hero will possess extremely powerful legendary skills, making him a thorn in the side, very difficult to kill. But I realized that so far, the hero seems quite righteous and is doing good things. I asked why she wanted to kill the hero, and she replied that the hero would become stronger and stronger until one day he would have a final showdown with the Demon King. In that battle, the Demon King would be defeated, and the hero would reign supreme. But after a year or 2, the hero's power would make him arrogant, and he would become as cruel as the Demon King himself, which would bring about the end of this world. She wanted me to stop that from happening. I decided to accept this task, but requested to be provided with a good set of skills to make my job a little easier. The goddess agreed and gave me the best stats a person could have, along with 5 special skills instead of 1. She let me choose my skills, and after I was done, she told me to be careful because although I was superior to others in this world who only had 1 skill, the hero was still much stronger as he had over 30 skills. I promised to be careful and was then sent to another world where I was born into a noble family, specializing in assassination, with a beautiful mother named Esri and a master assassin father named Qian. A few years passed, and I grew into a talented young boy. Every morning I went hunting, where I learned the best way to hunt was to kill it with a single shot to the head before the prey even knew it was being hunted. This way, the meat's flavor was best preserved. I brought back another rabbit and cleaned it before deciding to try a new dish. My mother complained that she didn't have enough food to cook for me, but I told her to shut up because I was about to make a dish that even Gordon Ramsay would love. I started to chop the rabbit into small pieces while thinking about all the nutrients I would get from the dish. Like a gym enthusiast, I thought of using rabbit meat as a main protein source because it is low in fat, but because of its gamey flavor, it doesn't taste very good. To fix this, I added a handful of herbs and dried mushrooms and then put everything into a pressure cooker. While waiting, I started making a bechamel sauce, a recipe I learned while posing as a royal apprentice to approach my target, possibly a boastful judge who knew nothing about gastronomy. Finally, I added the cream sauce to the stew and served it to my family. Everyone loved the dish, and my mother even urged me to sell it in restaurants to make money. Truly a mother of gold. That day, my father Cian told me to come to the training room for a regular checkup on my week's growth. Every week, like my uncle when he was drunk, Xian checked my body to make sure my bones, muscles, and joints were healthy and developing properly. Turns out my family were also the royal physicians of the kingdom. But behind the scenes, they used their physician status to approach and monitor targets. My father was a very strict teacher and taught me all sorts of healing and monitoring techniques, while training my stealth, strength, close combat, and weapon skills. This was very convenient for me because I didn't have to hide my training to one day kill the hero. After checking my body, he told me to put my clothes back on, praised my recovery ability, and finally said I might be ready for the surgery. This really excited me because it turned out my family had another secret. My father and the elders had undergone a special surgery that transformed their eyes into a very special weapon. After the surgery, they could see mana, had better vision in low light, and could see everything happening hundreds of meters away. I had been waiting for this moment and immediately agreed to the surgery. After the surgery, I had to wear bandages on my eyes for a few days. But when the bandages were finally removed, I saw the world in a way I had never seen before. I turned to my father and noticed that I could not only see the flow of mana in his body, but I could also see mana emanating from my own body. My father said that they had finally found a teacher who could teach me magic. And this really made me happy, because ever since I came to this world, I had always wanted to learn magic. Finally, the day I met my magic teacher arrived. And for some reason, my mother decided to dress me in a girl's outfit. Regardless, my family and I prepared to welcome our teacher, whom I had expected to be an old man named on Epstein's list. But because I am in an anime, of course, I have a beautiful, white-haired teacher named Dia. I seemed unimpressed and wondered if Dia was skilled, which Dia sensed and decided to show off her power as one of the kingdom's top 5 mages by causing a large explosion nearby. The next day, I officially introduced myself to Dia, and she told me to skip the formalities because she was only 3 years older than me. She then gave me a small crystal orb that could hold mana and asked me to pour everything I had into it. I complied and began channeling my mana into the crystal orb, and Dia was impressed because I seemed to have a good mana capacity. However, she was already impressed even before I showed her what a monster I was. I increased my mana by 1,000 times through constant practice, and I kept pouring more mana into the orb than it could handle. Dia panicked when she saw it cracking, and told me to throw it as far as possible. I immediately threw the orb into the sky, saving my family's ancestor from exploding just in time. The strong explosion shook everything for miles, and Dia was stunned by her apprentice's ability. Just then, my parents ran up and asked what had just happened. Dia tried to cover for me, saying I should be more careful, but it turned out my parents were incredibly proud of my magic. Xian said the spell was great, but it was more suited for war, while they needed me to become an assassin. He asked Dia to teach me some spells that could help with that, and left immediately. Dia couldn't believe they were so supportive when she would be shot if she broke even a single cup. But then I asked her if she had more orbs like that. She refused, saying they were extremely valuable, and they didn't give them to anyone. At night, I wondered how to get more of those orbs as they would be very useful for killing the hero. Suddenly, Dia knocked on my door, and what followed was us sleeping together. Dia said that as my teacher, she could order me to do anything, and I decided to obey her command to avoid any trouble. The next day, it was time to find out my attributes, and Dia asked me to pour a little mana into the orb. She checked the fire and water attributes, and I had both. Dia was truly happy for me as people with 2 elements are very rare, but I asked her to check the remaining 2 elements. Dia was shocked to find out I had all 4 basic elements, but she was also delighted to find such a talented student. Next, she taught me how to convert mana into a specific element, starting with the earth element, which involved my future teacher having somewhat intimate actions with me, but I secretly liked it. With her guidance, I was able to convert my mana into the earth element, and then a spell suddenly appeared in my head. Dia said that was the first spell God sent to my brain after I unlocked my magic. I didn't know how to read the words that appeared in my head. So Dia demonstrated for me, and I was able to imitate her with great accuracy on my first try. I continued to practice until I mastered the spell, and Dia was truly happy for me. She said the more I practiced, the more God would directly transmit spells into my brain. However, I asked her if she could write down the spells she knew, so I could try them out. She was fascinated by this idea, and when she wrote out the incantation to create metal, I could develop it perfectly, even without God giving me the incantation. She couldn't believe she never thought of it, and I think it's some kind of mechanism in this world that prevents everyone from thinking they can do this. However, I don't know what the language of the incantations means, and I can only utter words when learning from Dia, which isn't very effective. So I asked her to write down all the incantations she knew, so I could try and figure out their language. Dia started writing down incantations to create different kinds of things, and found some connection with numbers in them. I immediately realized that the numbers only referred to physical properties like the melting point of metals, and I explained that to Dia. However, she doesn't have enough education to understand physics, and I don't blame her because I am the same. Regardless, I realized that I could create an incantation to create gold that Dia didn't know. I asked her to recite the values into the incantation language, but when she tried to develop it, she accidentally weakened and collapsed. After that, I tried to develop the incantation myself, and surprisingly, I could create a gold bar without any issues. I suddenly realized that it was because I chose B-rank skill called Spellweaver, which allows me to create new incantations. However, after seeing me develop the incantation once, Dia could also copy me, and we both got excited to find a way to create new incantations together. And so, Dia and I continued to practice together while becoming closer day by day. Eventually, I created the most badass incantation possible, and created a pistol that could shoot tungsten. Dia could also do it, but I wasn't satisfied with the output. So I upgraded myself and created a bazooka that could destroy targets from miles away. A few days later, Dia hugged me tightly at night because she had to go home the next day. She wished she could stay with me forever, but that was truly impossible. Instead, I gave her a beautiful knife made of titanium alloy as a gift to remember me by, and in return, Dia gave me one of the rarest magic crystals. After that, she made me pinky promise that I would come to see her when she truly wanted to see me. The next day, Dia left, and when she was gone, Cian decided that I was strong enough to learn more about my family business. He took me to a prison with inmates, saying that they were used as training dummies to ensure that assassins were never hesitant when killing anyone. This made me curious, and I asked my father why he didn't train me to suppress my emotions and become a killing machine, because then I would never be hesitant. Cian told me that we are humans, not tools, and we don't kill anyone just because we are ordered to. We evaluate the crime of the target and decide whether killing them truly benefits the kingdom, and for that, we need our humanity. I was confused because this was the complete opposite of what I learned in my previous life. A moment later, Cian brought me to a room and said it was time for me to raise the life I took from someone. He led me to a girl tied to a chair and said she had committed numerous crimes such as theft, robbery, murder, and destruction. Cian told me not to hesitate, even if the girl begged for mercy and said it was just an accident. However, I knew when someone was lying, and I cut her wrists with my sharp knife so she would die relatively painlessly from blood loss. She lost her composure and ended her act to curse me, which I found unbearable, so I threw the knife at her head to ensure she wouldn't torture my soul anymore. A month later, I attended a harvest festival with my parents, but my goal wasn't to enjoy the festival or learn about the economy of the territory. Instead, I wanted to find someone with mana to recruit them as a subordinate in my hero-killing quest. I quickly found someone with mana, but because it was an ugly old man and not a cute girl, I immediately pressed the skip button. After that, I couldn't find anyone with mana anymore. Therefore, I decided to be more patient in my search. A day later, as the weather started to get cold, I went hunting for some animals so we could stock up on food for the winter. When I arrived at the forest, I sensed some living creatures nearby, and by placing my ear on the ground, this idiot somehow managed to detect that it was a pack of wolves surrounding a fawn. I decided to steal the fawn from them, but when I arrived, I saw that the wolves were actually eating a helpless girl. I decided to save her first and immediately shot the wolf that was attacking her. After that, I performed a superhero landing right in front of her to show off, and then told her to hold my things while I practiced my skills with the wolves. I quickly dealt with the wolves before turning to the girl. I asked her who she was and what she was doing there, and the girl hesitantly said that her family was very poor, and they had kicked her out of the house to save on a meal during winter. She had heard that the lord of the territory was a rich person. Therefore, she tried to cross the forest to get there, and that's when the wolves found her. I took pity on the girl and prepared a bowl of porridge for her. I told the girl to eat slowly, and if she wanted more, she could have another bowl, and then went to skin the wolves while waiting. When I returned to the girl, I told her I was the son of the noble family managing this territory, and she was truly delighted to hear that. She said it was a sign from the gods, because yesterday she had a dream that she would soon meet someone important. I suddenly asked her if she wanted to come with me, because then she would never have to worry about food again. The girl was very happy to hear this, but she asked me if I was really sure about the offer. I replied that I wanted her to come with me, and the girl was so touched that she cried, because even her parents didn't need her. However, before taking her, I made it clear that I am an assassin and I will kill many people in the future. I told her that if she wanted to come with me, she would have to help me with my work. And if she couldn't do that, I couldn't take her with me. The girl happily accepted the offer because I was the first person in her life to need her. When she took my hand, she introduced herself as Tart, and I welcomed her without revealing the real reason I wanted her. It turns out Tart has mana, and that's why I had to attack to show my strength, feed her, and even reveal my secrets so she would trust me. This was all part of my standard brainwashing process, and I made sure Tart herself decided to come with me so she wouldn't betray me in the future. 2 years later, Tart became my assistant, helping me not only with work, but also with daily activities. Under my training, she became a skilled assassin, but her only weapon was a scythe. I knew a scythe wasn't an ideal weapon for an assassin because it couldn't be easily concealed, but I still wanted Tart to be better than she was. One night, I found her secretly practicing knife skills, and Tart apologized for entering the training room without my permission. She said she wanted to be more useful to me, but I told her to stop. Tart panicked, thinking I would abandon her like her family, but instead, I created a magically collapsible scythe and told her to use it. When Tart used the scythe, she was able to destroy the training dummies, and even I was impressed with her skill and focus. A few weeks later, Tart and I went to the market, and everyone there was very grateful to me. I helped them by suggesting new fertilizers for their crops, and by using my magic to provide water during droughts. Everyone gave me their produce as gifts, and when I returned home, my horse-drawn carriage had more food than I could eat before it spoiled. Tart praised me, saying I didn't hesitate to help my people. But I replied that helping them in their daily lives was my duty as a feudal lord. I told her that just protecting them from monsters and bandits wasn't enough to earn their trust. Therefore, I had to do these things as well. Tart was very impressed with me, because the feudal lord of the land she came from was a greedy man and didn't care about his people at all. That night, I stored some magic spheres in my vault. I examined the spheres Dia left behind and figured out how to produce them myself. Now I have thousands of those spheres, all filled with magic in case I need to use them as weapons. Just then, Tart walked into my room and told me my father had summoned me to the training room. When I arrived at the training room, Cian went straight to the point and asked me about Tarte. I replied that she was skilled enough to perform small tasks on her own, but that was not what he was interested in. I understood what he was asking and told him she wasn't a spy sent by another noble family to steal our techniques. I reassured my father that I had been watching her closely and her body language didn't indicate she was lying about anything. Father, Cian was happy to hear that because if Tart was a spy, they would have had to kill her. But that would have been a great shame as it's very rare to find commoners with mana. He still thought there were many coincidences in the way Tart and I met, but now he could believe it must have been a miracle that brought us together. After that, Cian told me he had summoned me here to perform the next training exercise, which was also a special test. He said that if I passed this test and then only one more test, I would graduate from my studies and become an official assassin ready to take on missions. I gladly accepted the mission, which turned out to be a bonding time between father and son by dueling each other. We both went into the forest to fight like assassins, and I realized that whoever finds the other first would have a great advantage. I immediately lost to my father in that regard as he had spotted me and shot an arrow at me before I could even notice. I started running away while scanning for the direction the arrow came from. I quickly found my father and threw a dagger at him, but he easily blocked it. I then crouched down to attack him, dodging the first of my father's attacks. However, as I tried to attack him, Cian broke my knee. I somehow managed to kick him and escape, and thanks to my healing magic, I was able to return my leg to a fighting state quickly. I continued to hide while thinking I was stronger and faster than my father, and I also had experience from my past life. However, I was still pushed back, as Cian could use his magic eyes to predict my movements. They don't operate like the Sharingan, but he can see the small changes in my body to know which technique I would use next. Just then, I felt him approaching, so I tried to run away, activating a decoy. I dodged the decoy, but that turned out to be a misdirection, and the real attack came from Cian, who made me vigilant once more. This time I managed to kick him, and Cian disappeared into the forest. After that, I decided to focus more on predicting my father's movements rather than moving and standing near a tree. I sensed 2 killing intents, and immediately a dagger flew at me from the right. I dodged it only to see another dagger flying at me from the left. Normally I would think that father is aiming at his weak point, but this time I know that this is also a bait, because a true assassin would hide his killing intent when preparing to finish. I dodged the knife, just as my father lunged from behind. Cien grabbed me by the shoulder, but as I put a knife to his neck, he admitted that he had lost. After that, Cien bandaged my wound, grumbling that he had lost to his son, who had not even reached adulthood yet. He thought that meant good things for their family's future because I even held back in the fight by not using magic. I said that if I used magic, the fight would be meaningless because it would not be a test of my skills as an assassin. Cien realized that his son had truly grown up and declared that he had nothing left to teach me. He told me that I was ready to take on real jobs, and that all I needed was experience to become stronger. From that day on, he started taking me along on actual assignments, where we assassinated corrupt and greedy nobles for their heinous crimes. While our secret job was to take lives, our daytime job was to save people. Cien was often invited to nobles' houses because he was the most skilled doctor in the kingdom, and he brought me along so I could see how much effort the nobles put into protecting their security. One day, as we were returning from a patient's house, Cien told me about the final training exercise and also the final test before I could take jobs on my own. He said that assassins don't always go through the back door, sometimes they disguise themselves to go through the front gate and assassinate the target by gaining their trust. I was well aware of this technique and asked if my father wanted me to become a chef because I was good at that. However, Cien wanted me to pose as a merchant because the nobles would lower their guard to merchants who could bring them the goods they wanted. He fabricated a perfect fake identity for me as Ilig Balor, the son of a famous merchant family. The head of the Balor family owed him a favor. Therefore, they agreed to his terms and were willing to train me as a merchant for the next 2 years. Right after that, Cien organized a party for me because I was about to embark on my final test. All the branch families involved in the assassination business were present during this occasion. And while everyone rejoiced at the news that I was a prodigy, a drunkard named Rona was enraged at me. He threw his glass of red wine at me, which I easily caught. Rona's father tried to stop him, but he declared that he could not accept me as the family's successor. He said that after Cien's eldest son died, he should have taken that place, and that it was unfair for a much weaker person to snatch it away. Cien said they would decide who was stronger through a fight, and he immediately ordered the battle to begin. Rona wasn't even ready yet when he realized I was behind him with a dagger. I lightly drew a line to warn him, but when Cien declared the battle over, I let Rona go. However, this drunkard still hadn't learned his lesson, and he lunged at me. I threw him to the ground and broke his arm. Cien took this opportunity to boast about his son, saying that this is how assassins fight and that no one here could defeat Lug in a fight. However, I had a different idea, and that night I invited Rona to meet me in the garden. Now that he was sober, Rona realized he had acted like a fool. He said he was still annoyed at losing to a younger person despite being the strongest of the branch families, and I told him that he was lucky that his father, who was the strongest assassin of our family to date, lost to someone 30 years younger than him. Rona was shocked to learn that the rumors about me defeating Cien were true, and then I made him an offer. I told him to become my subordinate not as an assassin, but as a swordsman, because his swordsmanship was better than his stealth skills. Rona might have been arrogant, but he wasn't a fool, and he accepted the offer to become the right-hand man of the future leader of the family. The next day, I set off for training with the Balor family, and Dia came with me. Before long, we arrived at the commercial town of Meltu, and I changed my appearance while fully embracing my new identity as a merchant. Meanwhile, in town, a blue-haired girl named Maha was managing a small but profitable business. Her late father was a merchant, and she learned the basics of business from him. Therefore, she now leads a small group of orphans who give tours of the city. It's not a big job, but it's an honest living. And under Maha's leadership, her friends are living better lives than before. Maha dreamed of becoming rich enough to buy a house for all of them, and everyone was happy. But just then, a group of thugs appeared before their base. These fools publicly announced their intention to capture them, and Maha confronted them with her magical powers, telling her friends to run. She tried to run too, but the thugs caught her along with 2 of her friends. They immediately took them to an orphanage outside the city, run by a wicked old man named Torin. He said that from now on, they would be part of his orphanage, and the boy who accompanied Maha shouted at him, saying that they didn't need his help because they were still living well. Torin grabbed the boy and said that anyone who didn't obey him or tried to escape would be punished. Maha and the others were thrown into a room where the rest of their friends already were. They wondered why someone would kidnap them to put them in an orphanage. But a girl noticed that the Lord's wife runs a charity and sponsors orphans, which is why Torin kidnapped them to make easy money. At that moment, one of the thugs threw a bunch of vegetables into the room, saying that it was their food for the whole week. While others despaired, Maha told them they should start cooking. As they sat down to eat, the children thought they always wanted a home, but not like this, and they worried about what would happen to them from now on. All that happened years ago, and everyone has grown up a little. They were used as maids in the orphanage and were forced to sew clothes to sell in the market. Those who didn't do well were beaten by the thugs. But Torin told the leader to go easy on them because he needed them in perfect condition for his next business venture, which was to sell them to perverts. One by one, all of Maha's friends had to go through the worst parts of their lives. And one of them was so devastated that she tore her face with a sickle so that no one would want to buy her anymore. A few years later, Maha overheard Torin talking to his subordinates about how Maha had reached the age to have her own customers. She panicked, remembering what had happened to all her friends, and ran to the stable to tear her face. However, at that moment I appeared behind her, saying words of encouragement about not ruining her beautiful face with tears. Before long, all the girls were lined up in front of me when Torin introduced me as the son of the Balor Trading Company, who was ready to take a girl as his assistant. Everyone was hopeful, except for the girl who had torn her face. But I was only interested in Maha. I asked her to become my assistant, and Maha hesitated because she thought it was unfair to her friends. However, I had an agreement with Torin, who said that the girl needed time to prepare, so I should come back in 3 days to pick her up. Maha was horrified to realize that the scoundrel intended to sell her to some perverts and then attack her himself, but she didn't dare say anything in front of him. I accepted the terms but reminded Torin that since I had bought Maha, she was part of my family. That night, Maha was prepared to be taken to meet her first client, and on the horse, Torin started teasing her, saying that if that kid had come a month late, he could have made more money from her. Maha thought of me, and she didn't want anyone to defile her before she left with me. That suddenly awakened her magical powers, and she pushed Torin, forcing herself out of the carriage. She ran into the forest, but the thug had also chased after her, because he could also use mana. Maha begged him to let her go, but he refused, saying that perhaps this time he should enjoy her first. Suddenly, I arrived there and shouted for help, telling Maha that I needed her to come with me immediately. Torin also ran to the scene, telling me that I couldn't take the girl today. However, when I declared that I couldn't let my family be in danger, Torin ordered his men to attack me. The monster lunged at me, and I easily broke his arm. Torin attacked me next, and I easily subdued him as well. But instead of killing him, I decided to hand him over to the law. Meanwhile, Tart pretended to be Maha and went to the psycho's house. But she had a bodyguard right behind her, and they captured her. The next morning, Torin and his entire gang were arrested, and the girls were able to live their lives freely again. I even healed the scar on the girl's face as a favor to Maha, who had to leave her friends behind to go with her prince. A few days later, I performed surgery on the Balor family's biological son, but I forbade him from telling anyone. The head of the family was very grateful to me and asked how he could repay this debt, because the injured never accept anything for free. I only asked him to let me keep my family as a backup in case the assassination caused me too much trouble. Mr. Balor was happy to hear this, and then suddenly remembered that he had also completed the paperwork to adopt Maha into the family. A few weeks later, Mr. Balor showed me the design of a store they owned. He explained that they had tried to open it as a bar before, but it was a complete failure, and now they wanted to turn it into something else. Mr. Balor asked me to manage this store because he believed in my abilities and character. I gladly accepted the task and then told Tart and Maha about it. I told them that I also planned to use this store for my assassination-related work, and therefore I needed to sell items targeting the upper class. I decided that selling high-quality cosmetics and sweets would be the best way to make money. While gathering information, I quickly presented the idea to Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, and his wife, who hated me bitterly because she believed I was her husband's illegitimate child. When I told them about the idea of starting a cosmetics business, they said the market was saturated and brand names were more important than product quality. I understood that, but I said I would introduce a completely new product to the market. I started talking to my alleged mother about how cleansing would remove oil and moisture from the skin, damaging the skin in the long run. She agreed with me, and then I introduced her to the world's first moisturizing cream, saying it could reduce the damage caused by makeup products. The woman was curious about it, and she applied the cream to her skin. Immediately noticing the difference, the woman took off her mask to reveal her aged and wrinkled face, and I told her that if the moisturizer had been invented sooner, her face would have looked better. The woman agreed, and even Mr. Balor tried it. Later, I asked my aunt to try applying makeup over the moisturizer, because it would protect her skin while still allowing her to put on makeup to look like a little angel. The old woman was so impressed with the jar of moisturizer that she was willing to accept me as her son, and her husband told her to distribute it to her friends so they could have a ready customer base when the product hit the market. Then, he asked me how many jars I could produce per week, and I answered that I could only make 200 jars. I said that we shouldn't hire workers immediately because that would risk leaking our secrets to competitors, and instead we should gradually expand our production. Mr. Balor understood the logic and told me to get to work. But I told him that I needed to go to the families of doctors and assassins, because a crucial ingredient in the moisturizer was only found there. I decided to establish the factory right there, because then no one could steal our secrets. Mr. Balor allowed me to do so, and I returned home for the first time in a long time with Tart. A month later, my cosmetic store was the hottest item in the market, and Maha managed it with her friends from the orphanage. Now I had become famous throughout the kingdom, which allowed me to easily approach all the noble families in case I wanted to conduct a siege there. Tart was impressed with this, but she was more impressed with my kindness in hiring Maha's friends for the store. I told her that it was purely from a business perspective, but Tart thought I was just a kind soul pretending to be strong. Anyway, I asked her about the security of our factory, and Tart told me that spies had tried to infiltrate and bribe employees, but they had not yet succeeded. I knew that our desperate competitors would soon make big moves, and that night, I sensed someone approaching my room. I realized that the spy was trying to catch me and find out the secret to making moisturizer, but luckily Tart and Maha had alerted me, and they caught the spy before I had to do anything. After that, they tortured him, but the spy died without saying anything. I was not too bothered by this, and I decided to take a day off a month to visit Dia. Both Tart and Maha felt lonely after I left. Therefore, they decided to eat something delicious while waiting for me to return. Meanwhile, I flew to Dia's house with a few chocolate chip cookies, and she told me that she had created some new spells since the last time I visited. This time, she created a spell against gravity, and I was very surprised, because I thought I would discover it before her. Nevertheless, we enjoyed the tea party, and then practiced some spells, and when night fell, I returned to my mansion. Time passed, and I sent Tart to the battlefield to gain experience while I let Maha handle the business, so she could become a more skilled merchant. During that time, I attended many parties and built relationships with nobles who would help me complete my missions in the future. 2 years have passed since I joined the Balor family, and now it's time for me to go home. I decided to leave Maha in the city so she could manage my cosmetic store, and she was confident that she could handle the store well and even expand it. She told me about her plan to open branches of our store in other cities and showed me the first location she had chosen. I was shocked to see the location because I had learned a little about Maha's past, and I knew that it was a store that was once run by her father's company. However, when his right-hand man betrayed and killed him to seize his fortune, Maha felt her life was in danger and fled to this city. I realized that Maha intended to reclaim her father's company now, and this store was the first step towards that goal. I told her to do what she wanted because I trusted her, and I didn't care if she mixed personal matters with business as long as she could deliver results. Maha was very happy to hear that, and her friends immediately came into the room to give me farewell gifts. They told me that I had saved them from hell and given them a chance to live a meaningful life. I accepted their gifts and said that I would never forget them. After that, I returned to my normal appearance and was ready to go home. I let Maha handle both the business and the information network I had created here, and she promised to work diligently for it. Then, she asked me to visit her occasionally because she would be very lonely without me. I promised that I would see her between missions, and then I left that place. On the horse-drawn carriage, I noticed that Tart seemed a bit sad because she also missed Maha. Suddenly, I sensed Mana nearby and immediately ordered the coachman to stop the carriage. I discovered that a pack of beasts had surrounded us, and Tart asked for permission to show her skills. As soon as I gave permission, she drew the spear tied to her ready waist and was ready to hunt the beasts one by one. She also used some magic, and I was very impressed with her performance. However, I also realized that as the beasts had begun to invade human settlements, it was time for a hero to appear. Not long after, we returned to the family's territory, and I decided to visit the local villagers first. Everyone enthusiastically welcomed me and gave me fruits and vegetables to show me that they still loved me, even though I had left them for 2 years. After that, I returned home, and my adoptive mother immediately started feeding me because she missed me very much. After she finished, I decided to go see my father, who was working in his office. Sion was truly impressed by my growth in these 2 years, and he said that he had sent me to learn to be a merchant from Mr. Balor, but he didn't think I would become a world-famous businessman in just 2 years. Cian told me that he sent me to the Balor family, not only to establish a second identity that could help me in assassination missions, but for another reason as well. I didn't know the second reason. Therefore, my father told me that he wanted me to learn a different way of life other than being an assassin. I was shocked to hear this. So Cian explained that I had the talent to become a great merchant, and that I could live a much better life by doing business than by killing people. He believed he was too old to do anything other than assassinate, but I was still young and had not killed anyone on assassination missions. That is why he wanted me to think carefully about my future and avoid a bloody life if I wanted to. I rejected that idea because I had done everything to become a better assassin. And Cian told me that while our work was important for keeping the country safe, the country didn't care about us. He said that if our secret was revealed, even by accident, the king would immediately abandon us and attack us. That is why he created a second identity for me in case everything went wrong so that I could leave even before it started. Cian decided for me, and I proudly declared that I would work as an assassin. Cian asked me the reason, and I told him that I had met many noble people in my short life, and I wanted to protect their happiness and the happiness of other innocents like them. That is why I will kill those who destroy our kingdom, and I don't care even if I am abandoned because of this. I said that I will face the challenges when they come, and if I can't be an assassin, I will think about becoming a permanent merchant. Cian was very impressed with me, and after that I told him that I had another reason. I wanted to become a noble assassin and not a merchant. I said that I love Dia and I want to marry her someday, and so I need a noble title. Cian started laughing when he heard this, but he supported his son's choice. After that, he gave me my first real mission, which was to kill a secret military noble in exchange for favors. And I promised to complete the mission perfectly. However, before I finished off the noble, I decided to see if he was actually a worthy target to assassinate. I sent an encrypted message to Maha to gather information about him, and also to arrange for me to infiltrate his mansion. Since there was no Wi-Fi in this world, I had to send carrier pigeons to deliver messages, and I decided to meditate until I received a reply. Meanwhile, Ezri's mother started bothering me about finding a girl to marry because she wanted to see her grandson soon. She had chosen some girls from noble families, but I refused all of them because I wasn't interested in an arranged marriage. I didn't even want to talk to my mother about this issue, so I left it to Tart. She said I was too young to get married and have children. However, when Ezri's mother suggested that Tart could be the one to bear my child, she immediately changed her mind and said that perhaps it was the right time for it. However, I coldly rejected my mother and Tart, telling them not to bother me with such trivial matters. That evening, I changed my clothes to become a merchant again, so that I could infiltrate the nobleman's house. Tart asked if we should wait for Maha's report, but I told her that we should see for ourselves what could be publicly seen, while Maha investigated the hidden truths. The next morning, we arrived at a nearby city and saw many wounded soldiers. I realized that they must have suffered because the nobleman had sold military secrets. Just then, a girl arrived there to sell some medicine to them, and she offered a potion for free to try. Tart and I immediately suspected her, and when I tasted the medicine, I confirmed that it contained poison. I told the girl that she still had a chance to stop and then smashed her entire stock. The girl panicked as she tried to gather the medicine, and then a group of thugs arrived there to cause trouble for me. Tart and I quickly subdued them, but they were just low-level dealers, and I knew the problem wouldn't go away, even if we defeated as many of them as we did. Then, I turned my attention to the girl, who was in a panic because she needed the medicine for her drug-addicted mother. I decided to visit the girl's addicted mother, and she was raving from addiction. She attacked her daughter when she was not present, and I subdued her. I used my mana to knock her out and change the brain's chemical composition so that her body no longer needed the medicine. But the woman could still be psychologically dependent on it. Tart and I returned to my house that evening, and we found a batch of beauty products sent by Maha along with a message. She had discovered that the nobleman was actually the boss of this network, but he claimed that the gang operated strongly in his area, which was why the medicine was found there. He fed higher nobles to escape trouble, and that was why the king could not punish him openly. This was enough for me to decide that I would take on this job and assassinate that devil, the one making innocent people suffer. The next morning I set off for the nobleman's house, disguised as a merchant. Maha came along because she felt too lonely without me, and she clung to me on the way, openly saying she wanted me to share some of my DNA with her. I read the terms and conditions before clicking accept, and we are soon in the city where the nobleman lives. The city is prosperous, with their main occupation being agriculture and the nobleman's luxury truly showing off his wealth. We were greeted by the nobleman's wife. She was very excited to meet the founder of the world-famous cosmetic company. I greeted her and showed her my company's latest product. The woman asked why I was showing her the product before it was released to the market. And I said everyone knows how quickly her husband developed his empire. Therefore, he is the center of noble society. We want his wife to advertise our new product so that all the noble ladies will pay attention to it. And the woman was very proud to hear this. She started talking about how they were so poor a few years ago, but now they are truly rich. At that moment, his wife came and introduced herself to me. He was grateful that I chose his wife to test our new product. And I realized my target was the wife. The nobleman organized a party that evening, and I, along with the new cosmetic cream, received a lot of attention. The nobleman kept talking about how much he loved his wife and even caressed her publicly, which made me a little jealous. After a few days of gathering information about him, I found a suitable opportunity to strike. I knew the nobleman liked to look at the moon before sleeping, and I decided to shoot him from afar while he was enjoying his little habit. I aimed while Tart kept watch behind me, and once I locked onto the target, I fired a bullet through the nobleman's head, instantly taking his life. I was satisfied that the job was done, but at that moment, the nobleman's wife came out to the balcony and collapsed when she saw her husband had died. I felt a little moved by this scene and compared this experience to my previous life, where I felt nothing even after killing so many people. I accept that I have become a changed person in this life, and although I am an assassin, I am no longer a soulless tool. A few days later, my companions and I took a vacation on a deserted island, and when we returned home, Maha gave me some information I had asked her to research. She said she had found the divine treasure I was looking for, and it was a powerful staff. Tart asked me what the divine treasure was, and I told her they were indestructible and extremely powerful artifacts that have existed since ancient times. Maha then told us she was trying to negotiate to buy the staff from its current owner, Satanta, whom she believes is a top candidate to become a hero. She was having some trouble with negotiations, but she asked me to do it for her because she would complete this task as a businesswoman. Later, bad news arrived, and Maha told me that a civil war had broken out in the neighboring kingdom, and Daya's family had joined the kingdom's side. I felt a bit tense hearing that. But then Maha revealed the most worrying part. She said there was a soldier in the rebel faction causing a lot of trouble, and that soldier was the villain Satanta, the one who owned the sacred spear. I immediately flew to Dia's place to talk about this issue, and she welcomed me as cheerfully as always. When I brought up the subject of war, she casually told me that it was far from her home, and the issue wasn't as big as it seemed, so they would be fine. I told her they might be facing the hero who was in the rebel faction, and in that case, an ordinary person wouldn't be able to defeat him. I told Dia about my secret identity as a merchant, and said I could use my influence to scatter her and her family out of the country before they ran into danger. However, Dia got angry about this and told me that she was a proud noble of this kingdom and she had to fulfill her duty by protecting it. She then quickly returned to normal and asked me how I dyed my hair. I tried to tell her that this wasn't the time for that, but Dia didn't listen to me at all. She said her father wasn't home right now, so we could go on a date, and eventually, I had to go along with her. We went to the market after Dia changed her hair color to match mine, and she started asking herself where we should go eat. As I started telling her about the best restaurants in the city, I suddenly noticed a merchant passing by and commented that he must be a veteran. I said I had a sixth sense for discovering other soldiers, and I could tell that the city had a lot of them. Dia said her family had invited retired soldiers here for business because they could help them scatter if the flames of war reached the city. Then, Dia discovered a new shop and excitedly ran inside. She found an archery game there and excitedly asked me to win her a teddy bear. I agreed and took aim, using mana to lock onto the target. However, Dia told me that it was cheating and I didn't know how not to use my skills to win the prize. I decided to teach Dia how to shoot instead, and surprisingly, I managed to guide her to hit the teddy bear in just 3 tries. After that, we enjoyed the date like ordinary people, and when it was time for me to leave, Dia told me that she would be busy now, so she wouldn't be able to see me often. I understood that and left, promising to see her whenever she had time. However, as I left, Dia ordered everyone to stop the performance, and they threw off their disguises to reveal that they were all soldiers ready for war. Dia was planning to lead her forces into battle soon, and she cried as she said goodbye to me. She doubted if they would ever see each other again. A few days later, as I was relaxing in my mansion, Tart ran to inform me of an emergency. I followed her home and found my father treating a badly injured man. I asked him who the man was, and Xian told me that was their newest client, who wanted to assassinate Dia. and that he wanted me to take on the job. I was devastated to hear this, but Cian told me I could refuse the job if I didn't want to do it. I decided to find out more before making a decision, and my father told me that Dia's family had supported the king in their country's civil war, but they had lost. As the losing side, Dia's father had to pay war reparations, and he sold almost all of his assets to settle his debts. However, the winning side was not satisfied with this and demanded he hand over Dia to them because she was a beautiful girl with mana and she could bear strong children who could use magic. Dia's father agreed to this and to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. She also agreed to marry some twisted noble. I was angry with myself for not realizing this during our date, but Cian continued his story, saying that the people in Dia's territory were actually more loyal to her than her own family, and they had formed a volunteer army to protect her. This led to another civil war, and an army was dispatched to defeat the volunteers and capture Dia. I realized that the client wanted us to kill Dia so that there would be no reason for the war, and I was shocked to learn that our client was Dia's father. He told me that the assassination would be fake, and we would spirit Dia away while telling the world she had died. Now I understood the mission, but I didn't understand why my father accepted a mission that brought no direct benefit to our kingdom. Cian said he took the mission because Dia's father was his friend, and he wanted to help him. He told me that if I refused this mission he would go himself, but it would be too late because he didn't have enough mana to get there quickly. Cian then pointed to the injured messenger who had left Dia's territory 3 days ago, and now the war there had already begun. He said only I could get there in time and rescue Dia, but he would understand if I didn't want to take on this job. I knew that as an assassin I should refuse this job, but because it involved the woman I loved, I was willing to risk everything. I told my father I would save Dia, and he was very happy to hear that. He said that long ago, he had also broken family rules for Mother Esri, who coincidentally was related to Dia. I was shocked to hear that, and Cian told me that Dia was actually my distant relative, and that was why we had similar hair colors. But because we were nobles, any boarder could be home. I immediately prepared to set off on the mission, and Tart said she would help me. I told her she couldn't keep up with me to a place 300 kilometers away, but Tart already knew that. Instead, she wanted to accompany me for a stretch so I could conserve energy for later. I accepted her help, and Tart used wind magic to create a barrier in front of us, which helped remove air resistance and also pulled me along with atmospheric pressure. Thanks to that, I could travel a long distance without expending energy. But Tart was expending a lot of stamina and mana. However, she remembered that I had saved her so she could use her mana, and this was the perfect opportunity for her to be useful to me. She pushed past her limits and took me further than I thought she could. But in the end, her spell was broken and she was thrown back by the wind pressure. I caught her and stopped her from falling. Tart was sad that she couldn't help me anymore. I told her that she had done enough by bringing me this far, and then Tart asked me to promise that I would return home with Dia. I promised that both of us would return and then dashed forward. I arrived at her home at night and saw that only 200 soldiers from her family were fighting against 1,500 enemies, many of whom were using magic. I found it strange, but then I realized that Dia knew how to use a gun, and she must have been helping the soldiers hold back the enemy. I found it strange, but then I realized that Dia knew how to use a gun, and she must have been helping the soldiers hold back the enemy. This gave me an idea of what to do next, and I immediately drew my rifle and started shooting down the strongest magic users in the enemy army. The soldiers began to panic as their magic users were shot from nowhere, but they were used to gunfire and tried to charge at me with bayonets. I simply dodged the bayonet attacks and then used wind magic to listen to what the soldiers were saying. I discovered that they were panicking because they didn't expect another gunman to join the battle, and I decided to add to the chaos with my magic-filled grenades. I balanced enough fire, wind, and earth mana in the grenades to create a powerful explosion that would scatter deadly shrapnel everywhere and shot them at the enemy silently with my bow. The grenades created large explosions when they hit the ground, and the soldiers began to disintegrate. I suddenly noticed Dia standing guard by the window, and immediately her soldiers joined the battle, seeing the enemy in disarray. I let them attract all the attention while I sneaked closer to the mansion. I found the body of a female soldier and decided to use it as my decoy. But before that, I used my magic to find a completely unguarded entrance to the mansion. I soon found a passage with no guards and used it to reach Dia's room, where she was waiting with her father. As soon as Dia saw me, she ran into my arms, saying that she always knew I would come to save her. Then, Dia's father greeted me. He thanked me for bringing his daughter to safety, but also remarked that he wished to meet his daughter's boyfriend sooner. Dia was ashamed of that. But her father knew that there was no time for that now. He told me that he had actually planned to surrender, but his soldiers realized that, and they hid him here so they could keep Dia safe. I asked him what he was going to do now, and the man told me that he would ignite himself to attract the enemy's attention. By doing so, he would buy time for his comrades to escape, but he did not intend to sacrifice his life. He would disappear from the battlefield after his soldiers escaped, and then he would gather his strength to launch a counterattack on the rebels and reclaim the kingdom from them. I liked his plan and said that we would light a fire in the room and tell everyone that Dia had committed suicide because she could not bear any more bloodshed. I placed the body of the deceased female soldier as bait and then told Dia to shout outside the window that she could not live after too many people had died for her. Dia agreed and opened the window, but just as she was about to shout her fake suicide message, I felt something was wrong. I realized it was the same feeling I had in my past life just before being attacked by a fighter jet, and realized that we were in danger. I scanned the area with my magic eyes and quickly identified the danger lurking about a mile away. The enemy threw a giant spear at me. It shot out small bullets, killing all the soldiers in its path. And I immediately pushed Dia to the ground while throwing a nuke bomb to stop the attack. However, even though I threw a powerful bomb, the spear did not lose any momentum and instead completely destroyed the room before stopping in midair. Both Dia and I were shocked to see the spear suddenly start glowing with mana and then return to its owner at super speed. Now I had a chance to see the enemy closely, and I saw a confident, red-haired giant with an overwhelming amount of mana. The enemy also noticed me, and I immediately drew my bazooka to attack. I told Dia and her father to cover their ears as I fired a piercing, explosive bullet straight at the enemy. Dia thought no one could survive such an explosion. But our enemy was not some random soldier. I saw that the enemy only lost his armor after the explosion, and he was still completely fine. He seemed quite excited after taking the hit, because this was the first time he felt pain. He started shouting that he was really amazing, and his muscles started swelling as if he had worked out for 2 years in one day. I realized it was an S-rank skill called Rage, which increased offense and defense according to the damage one received. I realized that the enemy was too strong, and even if I fired my bazooka, it wouldn't cause any damage. Dia's father immediately told me to take the girl and run, because they didn't have time to die as they were facing the soldier who ended the Civil War single-handedly. And even the royal family surrendered because they knew they couldn't defeat him. Meanwhile, the soldier started yelling at me, saying that he was truly impressed with my previous attack. Therefore, he would give me a choice. He said that he could kill everyone here, or I could fight him fairly as a knight. He promised that if I won in a one-on-one duel against him, he would retreat immediately and never let anyone attack Dia's family again. I was surprised by this because the frenzy skill makes people lose their minds, but this guy was still functioning perfectly. Only at this moment did I realize that I was actually facing a hero, and my theory was confirmed when the knight introduced himself as Setanta. I realized that all the information Maha had given me about the divine tree and the hero was correct, but that didn't make dealing with my opponent any easier. Setanta told me not to think about escaping because he would chase me to the ends of the earth and fight me because I was the only opponent who had ever gotten close to him. I realized that Setanta wasn't bluffing, and I had no other choice but to accept the one-on-one duel. Dia asked me if I was confident that I could win, and I said that I was quite sure I would lose. When I took out my bazooka, I said that if this couldn't hurt Setanta, I wouldn't even last 10 seconds, which I thought was a lot. Dia panicked upon hearing this and asked me how I could fight someone I couldn't defeat. But I replied that I just couldn't defeat Setanta in a fair fight. I used my magic and summoned a large black flame, telling Dia that I was an assassin and I would fight like an assassin. I threw the flame out and it disappeared immediately. After that, I asked Dia's father to come with me, because I needed him to be present if we were to end this fight with a one-on-one duel. Dia's father said that he could use all his soldiers to hold Setanta so that Dia and I could escape, but I rejected that idea because their forces would be wiped out in an instant and Setanta would then catch up to us. I declared that I would assassinate Setanta because if he was truly a hero, he would continue to become stronger, and if I couldn't kill him here, I wouldn't be strong enough to do so in the future. After that, I approached Setanta with Dia's father and told him that I accepted his challenge. Setanta was very happy to hear that because no one had ever accepted a one-on-one duel with him before. However, I was waiting for the equipment that I had set up beforehand to be ready. Therefore, I decided to stall Satanta for 5 minutes. I began by introducing myself and giving a fake name to confuse the hero when I was scanning his body for any previous battle scars, but all of them had healed. Then I asked Satanta if he would actually retreat if he lost, and he promised he would. He said that he would fight anyone who attempted to attack the area, and in case I didn't believe him, he was willing to utter a spell upon himself to prove it. I told him that I believed him, but mentioned that in case Satanta died in their duel, he wouldn't be able to keep his promise. Satanta was actually pleased to hear that because no one had ever spoken to him like that before, and he told his aide to keep his promise for him if he died. That wasted a bit more time. And then I asked Satanta what would happen if I died instead. Satanta said that he would capture Dia in that case and kill everyone else, and I said that I couldn't let that happen. Then, the hero was ready to fight, but I told him to recall his men because they would get caught up in the fight and die needlessly. Satanta agreed with me and told his men to recall. And in the meantime, I asked Dia's father to let me do everything. Then, we prepared to fight. And I pulled out a knife to make Satanta more confused and to delay by seconds. I said that the fight would end before Satanta could throw his spear, and this made the hero even more pleased. I said I would flip a coin and the fight would begin as soon as it hit the ground, and Satanta had no problem with that. I deliberately threw the coin high to give it enough falling time so that my attack would be ready. Satanta was fully focused on the coin to make the first strike, and he didn't notice when another devastating attack from the sky rained down on him, causing a huge explosion. I was thrown back by the shockwave of the explosion, and I thought that the duel had ended long before it began. The attack had just accurately struck Satanta based on a type of weapon being developed in my world, where heavy tungsten rods would be shot from space down to Earth to cause massive destruction. That weapon failed due to air resistance. But in this world, I could use magic to counter it. First, I created a heavy tungsten rod and sent it into space using anti-gravity magic, while applying a spell to counter wind resistance, so it wouldn't burn up upon re-entry. Additionally, I had practiced that skill when I landed on the deserted island with Tart before, so I was sure of my absorption ability. Then, all I had to do was delay Satanta until the attack rained down, and I succeeded in that because Satanta was too arrogant for his own good. Now, as I hit the wall due to the shockwave, I realized that even the hero couldn't survive such an attack. However, I was also severely injured in the process, and I passed out while trying to heal myself. A moment later, I woke up when I heard Dia calling my name, and she was really worried about me. I told her that everything was fine, because I had won the hand-to-hand fight and now she was safe. After that, I noticed that the enemy's soldiers had fled and I had no witnesses to see her fake assassination. Dia said that it didn't really matter, and then I suddenly kissed her, overwhelmed by my feelings. Not long after, I returned home with Dia, and my parents happily welcomed her. Dia became a part of my family, and everything went smoothly. But then one day, Chine told me that the hero had appeared in our kingdom, and that meant the fairy queen was also rising. I was shocked to hear that Satanta wasn't the real hero, and I realized that my mission in this world was not yet over. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.